Hello and welcome to a metric pattern drafting video. My name is Ilona, I am a seamstress based in London, and today I want to share with you a foolproof way of drafting a bodice block using mathematical formulas. This bodice block is specifically meant to fit a normal figure with a large bust, so if that's your body type, this video is for you. Normal, by the way, refers to your posture, so if you slouch or you have a sway back, this draft will need extra fitting for your shape. As for the large bust, you'll know if you have one, as mass-produced commercial blouses will always pop their buttons when you wear them. If this video does well and there is enough demand, I will also go through drafting for other body types. Don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell so that you don't miss further installments of my videos. Now, get your tape measures out and let's get started. The very first step is to take your measurements, and I actually recommend you do this step over and over several times throughout the course of a whole month, and then use the larger measurements that you have taken. It is much easier to take measurements with a friend to help, but there is no reason why you can't manage by yourself. Before we start, it can be really tempting to take tighter measurements and think to yourself that you'll fit into the clothes that you make. But trust me, take the true measurement and try not to let it upset you. The best size to be is your size.
You want to take your measurements wearing the same underwear that you would normally wear under your clothes, and also some form-fitting garments such as a leotard and leggings. Today I am wearing a panty girdle from What Katie Did and my favourite Freya Deco moulded soft cup bra. You might find it useful to wear a necklace to help you find the base of your neck, and also an elasticated belt to help you find your natural waist. Have some masking tape handy, it will come in useful. We are going to take all these measurements in centimetres, starting with the neck. Follow the base of the neck, which should be where your necklace sits. Bust. Wrap the tape measure around the fullest part of your bust. Make sure it is parallel to the ground, breathe in, breathe out, and drop your shoulders to get a more accurate reading. Waist. We are looking for your natural waist here, so if you aren't sure where that is, just bend to the side, and where you see a break in your body, that is where your natural waist is. Once again, make sure the tape measure is parallel to the ground. Breathe in, breathe out, take a reading. Don't wrap the tape measure too tight or it will be inaccurate. Back width. This one is a little more tricky to do alone. This is the measurement from the underarm to the underarm across your back. You can try and mimic a contortionist and take this yourself, but I find it much easier to estimate this using a measurement chart. We'll go over this later in the video. Shoulder length. Take this measurement from your necklace to the bony bit in your shoulder. Back length. Take down the centre back from the prominent neck bone to your waistline. Your prominent neck bone should be where your necklace is sitting at your back. Let the tape measure drop down your back and feel with your thumbnail where it hits the base of your elastic belt. To be doubly certain that this measurement is correct, you can use a bit of masking tape to fix the tape measure at the prominent neck bone. That way you can drop your arms and this will give you a more accurate reading. Front length. Put the top of the tape measure at the same side neck point as you took the shoulder length measurement from. Let it fall down your front over your bust apex down to your waistline. Make sure the tape measure is perpendicular to the floor. Take the reading from the base of the elastic belt. You will also need your hip measurement. This is the fullest part of you below the waist. If you aren't sure where that is, it is usually where modern normal rise knickers sit. I like to sit down whilst taking this measurement, as I know that my hips expand when I sit. Before you take the tape measure away, put a piece of masking tape along your hip line at the side. Now measure from your waist to this piece of masking tape. This is your waist to hip measurement.
Now that we've got the measurements, it can be helpful to compare them to a standard measurements chart. This is to see if any measurements that you have taken might be wildly off. Let's compare my measurements to a standard sizing chart, and I will take you through my checking process. Keep in mind, when I buy clothes, I am usually a medium or a UK size 10 or 12, depending on the brand. The sizing chart I will be using is from the book called Metric Pattern Cutting by Winifred, Aldrich. You can of course use any sizing chart you like, but I particularly like this book and the way it's laid out. So if I go to page 10, I've made a copy so that I can mark on my sizes. First of all, let me find my neck size. That's 34 centimeters. I'll just circle that number there. Next, it's my bust. That's the top line, and my bust is 94 centimeters. That is somewhere in between size 14 and 15. So I'm just going to write it in the middle and circle it there. Waist, 76 centimeters. That is size 16. Shoulder length, spot on at size 10. Back length, in this book it's actually called nape to waist. And I am completely off the chart because I know I have a very, very short back. Front length, 40 centimeters. That's front shoulder to waist. I'm close enough to size 8 at 40.2 centimeters. Hips at 102 centimeters. I'm once again at size 16. And then waist to hip, 18. I am slightly off the chart there. So, as you can see, my measurements are quite varied across the entire chart. Now, you could say, well, surely my measurements that I've taken now completely differ to the kind of measurements I would expect my body to have. Now, remember, there is no such thing as an average body type. We are all different. And what I mean by comparing your measurements to a sizing chart, it's comparing whether the measurements that you took kind of match up to the problems that you experience when you buy clothes or when you've used other clothing patterns. So, for example, my neck at 34 centimeters is on the size 6 chart range, as is my nape to waist, which is completely off the chart, and my waist to hip, so everything is a little bit squat. I know that that sounds about correct to me because when I wear clothes, things tend to billow out at the back because I'm quite short, and also things tend to gape at my neck and at my chest because I'm quite small in this kind of shoulder area. My shoulder being on the size 10, 12 centimeters, that's kind of right because when I buy size 10 clothing, the shoulders and the sleeves tend to be the only thing that fit me really, really well. Now, the bust, waist and hips being at the size 16 end obviously doesn't make me feel particularly good about myself, but somehow I still manage to fit into size 10 and 12s when I buy clothes in shops. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there with these sizing charts, but that's definitely correct because those measurements I'm pretty certain about. Now, what should we do about the back width measurement? You can have a look along the back width line and think to yourself which one of these numbers is kind of average for all your other numbers. So some of my numbers are right at the 6 end and some of my numbers that are at the 14 to 16 end. So I would pick either the size 10 or the size 12 back width measurements to work with. I hope showing you this comparison process will help you figure out what's best for you and your body. Before concluding the measurement section, we need to decide on the amount of ease. Ease is the space between your garment and your body. It needs to be at least 1 centimeter for you to be able to move comfortably whilst wearing your garments. If you took your measurements not too tightly, 1 centimeter of ease will be enough for you. But if you pulled your tape measure tight, you might want to go up to about 4 centimeters of ease. As for your tools and materials, it's quite simple really. You will need a large piece of paper. I will be using brown paper that comes on a roll, but you can use any paper you wish. You can even tape together bits of A4 to create a large sheet. You'll also need pens and pencils. It's useful to have multiple colours so that you don't get confused between your construction lines. Just make sure that if you are using a pencil, that it is nice and sharp. And lastly, most importantly, rulers. I've got a lot of different types here. I've got a metal straight ruler, a quilting ruler, a triangle set square, a French curve, a pattern master, and a Haslam ruler. At this point, you might ask me, what is a Haslam drafting ruler? It's just a nice drafting tool to have, but it's not very necessary. There are many places on the internet where you can purchase this ruler as a digital download. It usually comes with instructions for using the Haslam Foundation drafting system. You can even find free photos of this ruler that you can scale and digitize yourself if you have the time. I myself prefer to use a simplified metric version of this ruler, which has only the arrows and information that I deem necessary for pattern drafting. I don't recommend using this ruler for the original set of Haslam Foundation draft instructions, as when I tried it, I ended up with a bodice block that was so misshaped that it was easier to give up than to go through a thorough fitting process. The Haslam Foundation draft system only seems to work well if you have the 1920s La Garçonne figure. My theory as to why this is because when Miss Grace Haslam first devised this mail order system in the 1920s in the little town of Bolton, the fashion at that time was for straight boxy cuts of clothes, so no curves allowed. I've got a link to my simplified version of this ruler in the description box, and I will be using it during the pattern drafting process just to get the curves of the armhole.
Follow the link below to copy my formula spreadsheet to your Google Drive. Input all your measurements into the cells B13 to B24. This spreadsheet now contains all the formulas you need to complete the draft. You can follow this draft through this video and also look at the written instructions on my website. We start by drafting the back. Make sure you give yourself enough width and length on your paper. Starting with the armhole length, at the top left of your paper, draw a vertical line downwards using the number from the first formula value in cell B31. Label the top and bottom of this line A and C. Back length. From point A, draw a vertical line downwards using the value in the cell B32. Label the bottom point D. From points C and D, draw horizontal lines the length of cell value B33. Label the endpoints C3 and D2. Join these points with a vertical line. Vertical middle of back. On the waistline from point D, plot 1.1 cm across to the right. Join this up with point A. This will be the centre back line. Back width. Along line C3, plot point C1 to the right of point C using the cell B34. From point C1, draw a vertical line upwards ending parallel to point A. Label the top of this line A1 and join left to point A. Armhole width. From point C1, measure along the same line to the right using cell B35. Label this point C2. Neckline width. From point A, measure along the same line to the right using cell B36. Label this point small a. Neckline depth. From point small a, draw a vertical line upwards using cell B37. Label this point small a1. Join up points A and small a1 with a curve. Back shoulder. From point A1, plot a point 2 cm down the line A1C1. Mark this point small d. Join point A1 to small d, then extend this line by 1 cm to the right. This length should be equal to the shoulder length plus 1. The back shoulder length has to be 1 cm longer than the front shoulder length to accommodate shoulder blade curvature. This extra centimetre can either be eased into the front shoulder seam or converted into a dart 7 cm long at the centre of the back shoulder seam. Back armhole. Plot a point halfway between C1 and C2. Label this point C4. Through C4, draw a vertical line. The top of this line should be parallel to point A1. The bottom of this line should stop at the waistline. Label the bottom point D1 and the top point A2. On the line C1-A1, mark a point 5 cm up from C1. From this point, draw another point 1 cm horizontally to the right. From point C1, mark another point at a 45-degree angle 3 cm away. Join up points C4, 3, 1 and 1 using either a French curve or the Haslam drafting ruler, placing arrow F at drafting point C4. That's the bodice back done, now for the front. Extend line D2C3 upwards by the number in cell B40. Label the end of the line as A3. This will be the centre front line. Neckline. From point A3, draw a horizontal line to the left using cell B41. Label the end point A4. Measure down along the line A3C3 using cell B42. This point marks the centre front neck point. Draw a horizontal line to the left out of this point and square up to point A4. From that corner, plot another point at a 45-degree angle 3 cm away. Join points A2 and A4. Along the line A4-A2, mark a point 4 cm to the left from point A4. Draw a vertical line down from point A4, where this line crosses line CC3, mark a point small e. Along the line C3-C4, mark a point 3 cm across to the left from point small e. Join up these new points. This is the right bust dart leg. From point C2, draw a vertical 5 cm line upwards. Join this point to point A2. Along this line, from point A2, measure 3 cm and mark a point. Calculate A1D minus 4, which should be the shoulder length minus 4. Use this length to join point 3 up to line A4-A2. Join that point to the bust dart point. This is the left bust dart leg. Front armhole. Mark a point halfway between the 3 cm point and the 5 cm point. From there, draw a perpendicular 1 cm line to the right. From point C2, draw a 2.5 cm line at a 45-degree angle. Join up points C4, 2.5, 5, 1 and 3 with a French curve or using the Haslam ruler. Using the front ruler, place the broad arrow at the 5 cm point and align the curve with the drafting point C4. Use the back ruler. Place the broad arrow at the 5 cm point and align the curve to the end of the shoulder point. Now, I messed up my curve here, so do as I say rather than what you see on the screen here. We're almost done with the bodices. It's time to finish the draft with waist darts. On the back, mark a point halfway between point C and C1. Draw a vertical line downwards to meet with the waistline. This is the centre line of the back dart. Measure 5 cm down this line from line CC1. This is the dart point. For the front waist dart, extend the right bust dart leg down to meet the waistline. Measure 5 cm down along this line from line C4-C3. This is the dart point. Using the numbers in the spreadsheet, draw in the front and back darts. Do the same for the side darts, however this time measure 1 cm up each side dart leg and join these points to the front and back waist dart legs. You can stop your drafting here if you wanted to have just a bodice draft, but I am going to extend this draft down to my hip line. Join up your centre back and centre front point with the side dart points using a faint line. Before proceeding, cut apart your front and back drafts. You will need to stick them down to some extra paper, giving you enough space to draft your hip widths. On the back, draw a dart line perpendicular to the faint waistline you drew on earlier. The length of the back dart should be 14 centimeters. Then extend the centre back line down by your waist to hip measurement. Draw a horizontal line across from this point using the value in cell B58. Join the end of this line up with the back side point. Use a curved ruler to round out this line. Now for the front. Extend the centre front line downwards by the length of your waist to hip measure. Using the faint line you drew earlier, draw a dart line perpendicular to that faint waistline. The length of the front dart should be 11.5 centimeters. From the centre front hip mark, draw a horizontal line the length of the value in cell B59. Join up the end of this line with the front side point. Use a curved ruler to round out this line. Cut out the draft and don't forget to label it and date it.
If I wanted to be really thorough at this point, I would walk the seams. This is the process of measuring all the seams and making sure that those measurements match with the corresponding seams. I am choosing to skip this step because I am pretty confident that my draft looks about right, but if you are new to this, I suggest you give walking the seams a go.
The next step is to transfer the pattern and all its markings onto your fabric. The fabric I am using for my mock-up is one of my husband's old shirts. It's perfect for this, as I can use the buttons as the back closure. To transfer the pattern and markings, I am using a friction pen. Don't forget to add an allowance to your seams. These lines drawn in the friction pen should disappear once I iron them away. I am also going to draw on the waist, bust, and central vertical lines using a fabric pen. I will be using these as guidelines when I check the fit later. Cut the mock-up out of the fabric and pin in place all the darts. This will make the sewing easier. Now sew those darts. I am using the largest stitch length so that if I need to, I can unpick it later. Once the darts are sewn, do the same with the rest of the seams. Don't forget to iron all your seams open and press your darts.
And here is the mock-up all sewn up. Now it looks pretty good, but I think it might have, just if I start moving around, it starts wrinkling. And what that is I've made some mistakes in my length measurements. It's worth saying that with a pattern drafting method like this, if you took your measurements spot on, then the draft should be good first time around. But because I was taking the measurements all by myself, I've clearly made a couple of mistakes in the lengths. Good practice dictates that I should probably follow the 3-step rule of a fitting process. The first step is to notice any pattern mistakes. So pattern mistakes is somewhere where maybe a curve is a little bit wrong. This tends to happen around the neckline or around the armholes. So sometimes the neckline might be riding up too high or the neckline might be a bit too low, and you just want to draw on a new neckline on yourself. Now, widths-wise, the pattern is pretty spot on. There is a slight issue, I think, in my back hip. You can see creases around my back hip area over here, and that means that it's a little bit too tight. So if I just unbutton this bottom button, that'll get rid of those creases. And what I'll do is I'll pop a pin into the back and then measure how much extra I need to add. While I'm on the subject of the back, there's a lot of extra fabric here. Now, I'm pretty certain that my back length was measured correctly, but clearly I've still got a bit of an issue here. So I will have to pop a pin in this wherever it's bunching up, and then once again measure this excess fabric and then take it out of the paper pattern. And let's just check the front. There's a little tiny bit of extra fabric in the bottom part under the bust here. The top seems absolutely fine, just the bottom. So maybe if I pinched it in at the center and took it up like that, that should probably solve that. So what I'm going to do is pop some pins into the places where the fabric is gaping, and then try it on again and see if I've estimated the correct alterations. Here is the first mock-up, all pinned up with all the changes that I was talking about. The one thing I obviously can't do is add an extra centimetre in at the back, so I have just left it slightly unbuttoned at the back to give myself some space, and I think adding in that extra centimetre is going to solve that problem. So the next step now is I could transfer all of this onto my paper pattern and just assume that it's all correct, or I could transfer all of these changes onto my paper pattern and do another mock-up.
The next step is to apply the fit changes to the paper pattern. Your alterations may be different to mine, so I suggest you have a look at the book Fast Fit by Sandra Betzina. It's the most comprehensive guide on how to fit properly. I have a copy of my original draft here. It's always best to make a copy rather than cut up your original. That way, if you make any mistakes with the alterations, you can revert back to what you had earlier. Length alterations are best done along the central bust line. That's the horizontal line halfway between the front darts. I need to take out a 1.8 cm wedge. Next, I will correct the darts so that there is still a 5 cm distance between the dart points. I need to fill the gap at the centre front to make sure it is a straight line again, and redraw the side seams to make them straight. As for the hips, it's easier to redraft that part of the pattern. Then, on the back, I need to take out a 4 cm wedge. I am following the same order of operations. Tape the wedge, fill the centre to make a straight line, redraw the side seam. And then of course redraft the hips portion.
Okay, so this is mock-up number 2, and I think it is now absolutely spot on. I know this is sticking out a bit at the side, but that's because I ran out of fabric and I couldn't quite sew up the hip area. But I think it's looking much better than the first one. It's actually taken away some of the gaping at the chest that I experienced in the previous one. The one problem is, I think the neckline is riding up. So remember those 3 rules of pattern alterations. Check for pattern mistakes. That's a pattern mistake right there. So I just need to lower that down by about 1 centimetre. I can just draw on a pen line onto here and cut that out. I have made this mock-up out of yet another men's shirts, and that makes for much easier fastening. And as you can see in the back is a little wavy, but I think that's to do with the quality of the fabric for this shirt. I actually think, let's say I was using a zipper and making a dress, it wouldn't be this bumpy. I think this is pretty spot on, and all the lines seem pretty good. So, yay! Successful!
And now I want to finish up by marking up some guidelines that will come in useful in future clothing drafts. Starting with the back, I have joined up my shoulder dart point to my waist dart point. This is the guideline to use if you want to turn this into a princess seam draft. I have also written in the alterations that I did to the original draft and of course put the date onto it. You can also mark some centimetre guides along the side seam. At this point you can laminate your paper draft so that it keeps its integrity for longer. As for the front, there's a lot more to mark on. First, let's join the bust and waist darts. Using a compass, draw a circle with the dart points on it. The centre of this circle is your bust apex point. Then draw a bigger circle, the radius of which should be the distance between your bust apex and the centre front line. This is the bust circumference. Along this circle you can apply a technique known as contouring. I am not going to go into detail about what this is right now, but I will add just one contour line from the bust apex to the centre of the neckline. From this straight line, measure 1 or 1.5 centimeters to the right along the bust circumference. Join the centre neck and the bust apex points to this measure. This contour line will help eliminate neckline gaping should you wish to use your draft to create a low-cut neckline bodice. Draw another such contour line from the shallowest point of the trough of the armhole curve. Next, let's add some centimetre guides along the side seam. Draw a line from the waist side seam to meet up with the bust apex. Draw similar lines at the quarter, half and 3/4 measures. This will help with bust dart manipulations should you wish to turn your draft into a classic bodice. Label your bust lines so that you don't get confused. Just like with the back, you can also laminate the front.
And we are all done. Join me in my next video where I will turn this block into a corset pattern. Thank you so much for watching, liking and subscribing. I hope you've enjoyed this video. See you next time. Bye.